Well, hello, SLOconf. My name's Jeff, and I'm excited to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes with you sharing my ideas on how cloud dependencies impact your SLO practice. First, a little bit about me. I've spent the last 15 years building tools for developers. I started with serverless APIs before Lambda even existed, and then I went on to build observability and incident response products at New Relic and PagerDuty. Today, I'm the CEO and co founder of Metrist. We're an observability startup focused on monitoring the cloud products you depend on. And since this is an SLO conference, let me start by telling you why I love SLO so much. See, I love the practice of service level objectives, not for what they can help us do, but for what they give us permission not to do. In my view, SLOs help us align on and manage expectations. They give us a framework for prioritizing our reliability investments, and they give us clarity on the why or the why not. And maybe most interesting to me is that SLOs help us run a more effective and happy engineering organization. But when it comes to reliability, I do think our industry faces a challenge that has direct impact on SLOs. And that's the third party cloud dependencies that we build on and build with. I don't think it's any exaggeration to say that today apps are built on top of other apps. That's anything from AWS for compute and storage, to Cloudflare for your DNS and CDN, Stripe for payments, Twilio for communications, Snowflake for analytics, and so many more things. And that's not to mention all the SaaS apps that power our work, things like Slack, GitHub, Datadog, and more. In fact, the SaaS management platform vendor, they estimate that the average digital business uses 137 different infrastructure, API, and SaaS products. And for those of you listening today, I'd bet that on average, the software you build and support has direct dependencies on about 50 different cloud services. And not only do we rely on these services heavily, but they also have a major impact on our own reliability. The Uptime Institute recently estimated that as many as 70% of all major SaaS outages in the last 5 years were tied back to an issue with an upstream dependency. And my work at Metrist shows that about 25% of all incident alerts are driven by third party factors. So, what does this mean for our reliability? Well, the practice of building apps on other apps makes our reliability practice that much more complex. Just like how our apps are dependent on other apps, our ability to deliver on our SLOs and our SLAs is dependent on the reliability of others. We all know that software can and will fail. What we don't know is when it'll fail. And probability tells us that it's unlikely that two highly reliable dependencies will fail at the same time. And that might sound like a good thing, but that's actually a bad thing. So, to understand why that's a bad thing and what the impact is of multiple dependencies on our software, we can use something called a composite SLA. And a composite SLA simply multiplies the reliability of all direct dependencies together in order to understand the likely reliability of an application. And we do this because we have to assume that these services will not fail at the same time, but they all will fail at some point in time. And when we do that math, we find that delivering a reliable app requires more than using equally reliable dependencies. And to illustrate that, we can use an example like I have on the screen now. Let's assume we have a product and it has a direct dependency on 5 different cloud services. Now let's assume that those cloud services each delivers 3.9. That's 99.9% uptime. And that's pretty impressive. Well, the reality is when you multiply those 3 nines together for each of the 5 services, we learn that our app can't do better than 99.5% itself. So that means if we want to deliver software with 3 nines, for example, we need to use dependencies that have better than 3 nines. All right, so this is an SLO conference. Let's start getting into why does this matter for our SLOs? Well, by definition, if you use SLOs, then you've selected SLIs and you're tracking those metrics. And the reality is that your upstream dependencies have a direct impact on those metrics. The error rates, latency, availability, and throughput of your app can and will be impacted by upstream dependency service health. So, just as we set SLOs in the context of the SLAs they support, so should we set and manage SLOs with the context of the third-party apps we use to deliver our products, our features, and functionality to users. Okay, my time is almost up, so I do want to leave you with a few practical tips on how you can use this information to move your SLO practice forward. The first thing I want to tell you is that you probably don't need SLOs specifically for each of your cloud dependencies. See, I think SLOs are about outcomes, and your software is the ultimate outcome we care about. Your upstream dependencies just support that outcome. So that means you can continue to focus your SLOs on your systems. But as you set and manage your SLOs, don't do so without considering the reliability of every dependency your app has. And that's inclusive of your internal and your external dependencies. And as you're setting and managing these SLOs with your dependencies in mind, make sure you don't set your SLOs any more aggressively than what your dependencies can support and deliver on their own. And because status pages are carefully curated and often not complete, you need to take it upon yourself to know what a dependency's actual reliability is, not just what their SLA promises. And finally, once you know what the reliability is of all your dependencies, it's time to start identifying which of these upstream dependencies has the greatest impact on your ability to achieve the SLOs that you've set for your systems. It's time to understand that and then evaluate what makes sense to invest in when it comes to redundancy, failover, and other fault-tolerant approaches. Okay, that's all the time for me today. I've had a great time at SLOconf. I hope you continue to enjoy it. If you found any of this interesting and want to talk more about SLOs, cloud dependencies, or third-party monitoring, give me a shout by emailing me at the address on the screen or hit me up on Twitter. Enjoy the rest of your time here and happy SLOing.